Talking about uncomfortable things is something Christian singer and songwriter Jason Gray has come to epitomize over the years.
I think I'm naturally a communicator. I've got things I want to say. I've got things on my mind. And for a long time, they felt kind of locked up inside of me. Maybe this thing that I've always imagined is a liability. Maybe it could be a gift.
A half hour with Jason Gray on EastIdahoNews.com.
Just by way of full honesty and disclosure, I had never really heard of your music at all. And then I was preparing to chat with you today, and I came across a podcast that you were on a few years ago, and then I've since been exposed to a few of your songs, and I'm really impressed with what I've heard.
Oh, thank you very much. What have you heard so far?
I've heard, it's one that you did last year, What I've Learned from the Hard Times.
Oh, What the Hard Times Taught Me, yeah.
Yeah. And then Death Without a Funeral.
Ooh, yeah, that was a song I wrote about my divorce.
And I relate with a lot that you said in there because I've been divorced myself. So that was a particularly moving song to me anyway.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you very much for taking the time to listen to that. Yeah, I'd probably put that in my top 3 songs that I'm the proudest of. Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. So, first of all, there's a few things that I learned about you just from doing a quick Google search that I wanted to talk to you about, if that's okay. And some of these are, your journey is filled with all kinds of personal things, and I don't want to, I certainly don't want you to feel like you have to. I don't want to make you uncomfortable. Is what I'm trying to say.
No,
but
you can't.
Feel free to.
I'm an open book, and we can't talk about the things that matter unless we're willing to risk being a little uncomfortable. So I'd rather talk about the things that matter than be comfortable. So ask me anything.
Okay. Well, cool. So so you have a speech impediment.
I do.
You have had that's been a challenge of yours your whole life. Talk about that. How did that develop? And how have you learned to cope with that as a singer?
Yeah, the stuttering, there it is right there, is it's mysterious. It's very, like, what causes it? What's going on with all that? Like, it's kind of hard to know exactly. But as far as I understand it, it's genetic. I'm genetically predisposed to it. And then what I've heard is that it kind of lies in wait inside of you and then is activated by a traumatic event. And for me, that appears to have been when my parents divorced. When I was 5, that's when it started. Sorry, I'm walking up and down. My stairs isn't folding laundry. I'll stop moving because I'm winded. Shoot. Another interesting piece of it is that it seems to be related to breathing, and like whatever it is that you have in your brain that regulates your breathing while you're speaking. I don't have that, but I can focus really hard on my breathing, and if I'm monitoring my breathing, I can be a lot more fluent, and that's what I'm doing right now as we're speaking. But it does require a lot of concentration. So then when I sing, it automatically clears up, and the idea behind that is that, well, when you sing, you automatically breathe properly. You're doing that from a different part of your brain, So
interesting.
Because
I was actually.
I could sing everything, but that I think that would be more awkward than the actual speech handicap. So I just go with the speech handicap.
Yeah.
Handicap. So.
Well, that's interesting because I was actually curious about that. Because as a singer, if you stutter just when you speak, has that ever been a conflict when you're singing? But it sounds like it's not.
Hardly ever. It's happened a couple times, but most of the time it doesn't happen when I sing.
So
it doesn't happen a handful of times.
So you were saying you were getting winded going up and down the stairs. So if you get winded and you're trying to have a conversation, does the stuttering get worse?
Yeah, I suppose it can. Yeah. Yep.
I see.
But yeah.
So
have you ever seen the movie The King's Speech?
Ooh, I haven't seen that one.
Oh man, it's a good one if you ever have a chance to watch it. It's based on a true story of the person who was the king as World War I was breaking out, I think, and he stuttered, and it was at the advent of radio, and so it was going to be the first address that the king gave to the people, and it was during wartime, and so his great concern was that if he stuttered for the king's speech, that would be hard on the morale of the country. And so the movie's about him seeking out a speech therapist, and them working out how he was going to do the king's speech, and it's moving, and it's funny. Like they discover that he can sing and he can cuss without any issues. I'm like, yeah, that's me too. I can sing and I can cuss without any issues. But
yeah, okay.
Just normal speech is challenging. So.
So over the years, have you worked with a speech therapist?
Yeah, I did, especially when I was in school. Yeah, and like I said, there's not a lot. It's still a very mysterious ailment. Like, it's kind of hard to know exactly what's going on with it. But
are there particular letters or sounds that for whatever reason are just hard for you to get out?
There are, and I'm not sure what the common denominator is between them. I'd say hard consonants like the K sound and the P sound, especially. Sometimes the T sound, but also like L's are difficult and W's. So it's weird.
Wow.
Who knows what's going on? Yeah.
Interesting. Well, so when you first developed this, I mean, I guess I'm interested before and after. Like, how bad was it, and then how far have you come since then? Because, I only notice a stutter occasionally when you talk. You speak pretty well.
Yeah, thank you. It's definitely. I want to say, has it gotten better over the years, or have I just learned how to mask it better? I think it's a combination of both. You'll notice sometimes I'll be speaking, and right there I'll take a breath before I finish the next thing. And when I do that, I'm doing my breath monitoring, but I'm also, if I can tell that I'm going to get hung up on a certain word, then I'll quick find another word, So that happens a lot.
Yeah.
When I talk with other people who have the same speech impediment, I can hear them doing that, like navigating their way through a sentence by looking for alternate words. So I do that a lot.
I can only imagine that as a child, this was probably very embarrassing for you.
It was. It did make me very self-conscious and very introverted. Speaking of the King's Speech, the actor who played the King was Colin Firth, and I think he won an Oscar, or he was up for an Oscar. His portrayal was wonderful, and normally when someone is portraying somebody with a speech impediment, like in a movie or a TV show, the actor is just kind of mimicking. Okay, so like there was an example where I couldn't find another word to replace mimic, so I just had to work through it, but usually actors are mimicking speech that is hung up on a certain letter. But Colin Firth's performance, he said that he decided to do his performance from the understanding of a person who has something to say and they can't get it out. And I thought, oh, that's brilliant. That's exactly what I felt when I was growing up. I think I'm naturally a communicator. I've got things I want to say. I've got things on my mind. And for a long time, they felt kind of locked up inside of me,
Yeah. So when did you learn to embrace that, hey, this is just a challenge that I have, and let's just embrace it?
That's a good question. I can think of a specific moment. I think it was a gradual acceptance, but there was a specific night. I share this story at my concerts that, as I began to have a sense of God's calling on my life, if you believe in that kind of thing, if you believe that God speaks to you or puts ideas in you, whatever you want to call the mystery of what all that is. But as I began to be aware, like, I think I'm supposed to do music and be on a stage, and I wasn't sure how that was supposed to work, The way I explained it in my concerts was that I argued with God about it, saying, you can't make me your spokesperson until you make it so I can speak. And but then I thought, oh, I see how this is supposed to be. I'm supposed to go out and do this anyway and step out in faith. And when I do that, God's going to make it go away. And that'll be my story. I get to tell that if you trust God, if you believe, step out in faith, you can rely on Him to be your healer and all these things. And when that didn't happen for a number of years, I had a lot of guilt and shame about it. Like, what's wrong with me? Like, I must not be believing hard enough, or God is angry with me, or something like that. And then I remember playing a show at a coffee shop in Mankato, Minnesota, called the Coffee Hag. And I got up there that night, and I stuttered horribly. Like, sometimes it's worse than others. I'm doing okay today, but like sometimes I can hardly get 2 words out.
Uh-huh.
Well, that was one of those nights, and just stuttered horribly. And when I got done, I just wanted to hide. But there was no place to hide. There was just a stage and the coffee shop, So I got done feeling, and I'm humiliated, and I step off the stage, and I just start to pack up my things to go home. Of course, no one's going to want to talk with me because that was embarrassing, But I noticed a line of people forming behind me, and I turned around to talk with them, and then I heard variations of the same story. I heard people say, Jason, thank you for what you did this evening. It reminded me that I'm not defined by my weakness either. That's not the only thing about me. Or there was the person at the end of the line who said, Jason, thank you for what you did this evening. I believe that God's been calling me to do something too, and I've been arguing with Him about, why I think I'm the wrong person for the job. And, well, you're kind of a disaster, and if you can do what you do, surely I can do what I feel like I'm supposed to do too, And I remember going home that night, realizing that it wasn't the content of my concert that spoke to people. It wasn't the stories I shared. It wasn't the songs I sang. What spoke to people and how God spoke to people's hearts that night, it just came from because I was a broken, imperfect person, and I got up there on the stage and I did it anyway. And that was the beginning of me understanding that maybe this thing that I've always imagined is a liability. Maybe it could be a gift, Maybe maybe God doesn't intend to heal me of my speech impediment, but maybe he intends to bring healing to others through it. And that was when I accepted it and began to make use of it. And so much of the work I do now is about that idea of accepting and integrating things. I mean, even the song that you mentioned, what the hard times taught me, rather than resisting or rejecting the hard times, learning to accept them. And when you accept something, a thing can't become a gift until you accept it, And so a lot of my work these days is encouraging people to examine the things about themselves that they don't like or that they imagine are liabilities or problems or weaknesses. Examine that and be curious about, well, how might this be a gift? Anxiety can be a real gift, because anxiety tunes you into the world around you. It can be a lot. It can feel like too much at times. But rather than resisting it, if I can accept the fact that I'm an anxious person, maybe I can begin the work of learning how to use it productively. Because anxiety is great for solving problems, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you have a problem and it's making you anxious, man, when you're anxious about it, all of you is tuned into that problem, and that's helpful for finding a solution, So a lot of my messaging is about all those things.
That's great. You were mentioning the movie The King's Speech. As you're telling your story, I'm thinking of the movie I Can Only Imagine. And have you seen that show?
I haven't seen it, but I'm familiar with the story.
I'm sure you are. It's a well-known Christian song, and the story is legendary. But there's an example of you were talking about how early on in your career you'd go to these concerts and perform, and you'd be stuttering like crazy, and you just feel like, I don't want to talk to anybody, and they're all going to think I'm weird. But yet people were lined up and they spoke to you afterwards. I think there's people love people who can just be authentic.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you can definitely tell when someone's being authentic and when they're not. And that's, that movie I Can Only Imagine is about a man who for years he would sing great words, but he wasn't truly being vulnerable until he learned to embrace his life. Embrace who he was, and that's when his dreams came true. So I think that's a great story there. So I'm curious then, at what point did you decide you want to become a singer?
Oh boy, I kind of knew ever since I was a little boy. Yeah, like I remember having a sense when I was 3 years old that. I think music is what I'm meant for. And
as a boy, you had the stuttering problem. So when you would say that's what you want to do, did people ever look at you like you're nuts?
No, I hadn't. At that age, I really hadn't put together that it might be challenging.
Uh-huh.
I just, when you're a kid, I don't think you're just kind of responding to impulses and not so distracted by the logistics.
Right.
So I and then people ask me if there's ever an aha moment where I realized, I can't talk fluently, but I can sing, And no, that would be a cool story, wouldn't it? But I can't remember any aha moment like that, So it must have just been a gradual realization, or something I felt intuitively, but never articulated it to myself.
Yeah. Well, and so along with this decision to pursue a singing songwriting career, an important component of that is your Christian beliefs. You know, you've specifically chosen a path as a singer in the Christian world, which is kind of a brave choice. You know, there's a lot of stereotypes with Christian music. Tell me about kind of how that evolved. What is your pivot point, I guess, that kind of converted you to Christ and made you decide to pursue that path?
Yeah, all that, I suppose, all that journey began, I grew up on the road with my mom's rock and roll bar band. And so I was always around music. I was on the road. I was accustomed to these things. And then she became a believer when I was in the fourth grade. She heard about this guy who was speaking about the dangers of drug and alcohol abuse, and she took me to go hear him speak because she had wrestled with her own alcoholism. Well, it turns out the guy was one of those sneaky evangelists who say they're going to talk about one thing, but they're actually going to talk about Jesus,
Uh-huh.
And so he gave an altar call, and she was in a tough space in her life, and she responded and answered the altar call, walked down the aisle. The guy speaking learned that she was a singer in a bar band and asked her if she'd come back the next night and sing for them. And so, literally overnight, she went from being in a bar band to beginning to sing at tent revivals. And then I was on the road with her doing that, And I'm trying to think if there was ever, I didn't aim my life at God at that point. I remember, as I was always being aware of God, but and especially up through high school, being afraid to give him too much of a role in my life because, I wanted to do music, and I was afraid if I give my life to God, He's going to make me go to Africa to be a missionary, and I'll have to stop making out with my girlfriend, and neither of those things are appealing to me. So no, thank you.
Right.
But then we were in an abusive home situation, and there was a night, Christmas Eve, actually, when I was 15 years old, when things got violent, and there were our lives were threatened, and he stormed out of the house, and my mom said, "Lock yourself in your room. I'm calling my friends. When they get here, have a bag packed, and we're gonna get out of here before he comes back." And I remember being locked in my room, afraid for my life, and that was enough of enough encouragement that I said, "Okay, Lord, if you get me through this night, I'll see what I can do about following you." It was very half-hearted, but give the Lord a few loaves and a few fishes, and He can feed 5,000. If you only give Him half your heart, He can do a lot with that. So
yeah.
So that was the beginning for me. In terms of doing Christian music, I think I've always been interested in motivations. Why do humans do what they do? Why do we do the things that we do? And I've just always been interested in that, And Christianity offers a very clear path for exploring that and being curious about that and having language around all of that. There's that great, authentic verse from Paul the Apostle. He says, "What is wrong with me? Why do I do what I don't want to do? And the things I want to do, I don't do them." Who hasn't felt that, And so I would say, more than evangelization, I got to tell people about heaven and hell and getting their life right. I would say that that's not my motivation. Mine is more about, I believe God is real, whatever He is. He's real, and a part of understanding Him comes from understanding myself too. There's a quote by that great reformer, John Calvin. He said, actually, hold on a second.
Okay.
I wrote it down today. Hold on, because I came across it. I got it right here. Thanks for waiting for me. Here, I found it. He said, without knowledge of self, there is no knowledge of God. So I would say that that's a big reason why I'm drawn to writing music explicitly about faith. So.
And a lot of your music stems from your personal life experience.
Yeah.
But as you look at your body of work as a whole, is there one particular theme that you'd say?
Yeah. There is, like, it keeps showing up in my songs, and I don't mean to do it, but I'll write a song and I'll look at it and realize after the fact, it's like, oh, I wrote a song about that again. And it's if I could only be known for one song, I would hope people would hear and remember my song called "The Wound is Where the Light Gets In." And I think that's a theme that I've hit on again and again and again. This idea that it's the hard things we go through that teach us the most, what the hard times taught me. And I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm a recovering jerk. I was gonna say a recovering asshole, but I cleaned it up for you. So, but a recovering jerk, and what I mean by that is that the things about who I am that I'm most grateful for have come about by going through a lot of difficulty. I'm more compassionate. I'm less judgmental. I hope I'm more humble. Because I've gone through enough things to realize that that's the appropriate way to be.
Yeah.
So
you earlier when I was talking, you said that probably one of your top 3 favorite songs that you've written is "Death Without a Funeral."
Yeah.
And then you just mentioned the wound is where the light goes, or it's something along. I can't remember the title, but you just
the wound is where the light gets in.
The wound is where the light gets in. So would you say that's the one you would most want to be remembered for? But would you say that is your favorite song? What is your favorite song of all the songs you've written? Which one's your favorite?
Yeah, of mine. Yeah, I think I'm the proudest of "The Wound is Where the Light Gets In."
I see.
Yeah.
Very cool.
That one, or "Right on Time" is one that that's off the new record. I feel very grateful about that one.
Let's talk about now this concert you have coming up at Idaho Falls Rescue Mission. For people who are going to attend, what can they expect that night?
Well, I like to make people laugh, So I think my desire is always to get to like a real, authentic place of healing. Like I think healing can happen we gather together as a group of people and all tune our hearts together. And I think there are healing properties in music. I know that I've certainly experienced that in my life. And but in order to get to that place, you can only go as deep as you go high. So I really like to make people laugh and have a lot of fun and do that all in the service of we're going to go deep, but the way to get there is we're going to laugh and we're going to have fun. So
that's great. And this will be a night. The venue's limited. It's a very small venue. So
okay.
It's one of those things where people will have to purchase their tickets. Do you know how many tickets are left? Are you involved in that side of it at all?
I don't know. No.
Okay, gotcha. But that's coming up June 11th, and it's part of a fundraiser for the rescue mission. Following that concert, you came out with an album last year, and I think your album last year was a reworking of some other albums you did. Is that right?
Well, I had released an album in 3 parts over the course of a year and a half. So first I released Order, which was 5 songs, and then Disorder, which was 6 songs, and then Reorder, which was the 7 songs, and then we put them all together to make one project called Order, Disorder, Reorder. But the plan all along was that it would eventually live as one project, but we wanted to release it in 3 parts.
I see. Okay. And so that you did that last year.
Yeah.
And now you're kind of, as you said, kind of creating your own tour, after enduring the pandemic. So what's new for you? What's coming up next for you? What's the next big thing you're working on?
Yeah, I'm writing songs right now. I've started a radio show on Sirius XM called Acoustic Storytime, and that's where I bring in 3 artists and we sit in the round and we I interview them Jimmy Fallon style, and get them to share the stories behind their songs. Like the last one, we had Amy Grant and the Afters and Jason Crabb, and it's just great. It's been great because you get to hear the songs from the artists acoustically, but we've had really authentic conversation around it. So I'm enjoying doing that. But I'm also working on a book and trying to write for my next record.
Oh, very cool. When do you have an estimated date for the book release?
No, I'd hoped to get it done during the pandemic, and I did not succeed in that. So I've got a path forward. I know what I need to do. I just haven't had time. So between writing for a record and trying to survive financially after a global pandemic, and I'm in a new relationship and a radio show. It's been hard to carve out time for it.
Yeah, I bet. Well, you're definitely busy, very busily involved in the things you're passionate about, which always makes life enjoyable.
Yeah, it's a gift to get to do things that you care about. For sure.
Yeah.
I'm very lucky.
Well, Jason, I appreciate your time so much. I appreciate your openness and being willing to talk about hard things. Be willing to open the book and be vulnerable. Is there anything you want to say to the people of Eastern Idaho ahead of your visit here?
Oh, well, I hope they'll come hang out with us I promise to tell the truth as best as I understand it. It'll be for a good cause, and we'll have a lot of fun.